So on Valentine's Day, we got this Florida high school mass shooting. And if you're new to this channel, please go to the video description and check out the links that I'll leave in the description and learn to apply what I'm going to present in this video for yourself. It's very simple. But what I always talk about is how our mainstream media is always coded with the system of coding numbers into words and phrases, and it's called gematria. And it stems back to Jewish mysticism, which is Kabbalah, which is the belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. And the people who are ruling over us, the people who control our media, the people who control our sports leagues, the people who wrote our told history, they understand this knowledge and they use it to rule over us every single day. And if you apply this for yourself, you'll see what I'm talking about. But this story is exactly the same. And they also use certain themes and whatnot. And if you pay enough attention by reading the media articles and just paying attention to what's going on in the world, you can pick up on patterns that are going on. And the reason that I bring this up is because 2 days before Valentine's Day, I noticed this pattern in the media that really didn't make any sense to even be in the media. I kept seeing Jennifer Garner stories for the last couple weeks in the mainstream media with the most pointless articles of all time. And, this one's about her selling Girl Scout cookies. There was another one with her eating a hot pepper or something and having to wash her mouth out with water. Like, what in the world are these, top stories on CNN and whatnot? Why is this even a top story? It doesn't make that much sense. But if you've been following my channel, I talked about how there's something to do with Space Cowboy and how it's synced up to a bunch of stuff. And it has James Garner in it. And, it's even synced up to the Falcon Heavy launch that was super connected to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and whatnot. Think about it. It was connected to David Bowie, who released Space Oddity just before the Apollo 11, where we supposedly landed on the moon, and it was the eagle that landed on the moon, and a bunch of other stuff. Eagles in Gematria equals 49. Falcon Heavy equals 49. Space Oddity equals 49. David Bowie equals 49. It was the 49th launch, and so on. But Valentine's Day, also in Gematria, just so happens to equal 49. So, anyway, I noticed that Jennifer Garner was in there, and James Garner is a main character in that movie, Space Cowboys or whatever. And I decided to look more into her. I knew there was something in regards to Valentine's that was connected. I just felt like there was a big event that was connected to Valentine's Day. Even earlier this year, in regards to space and whatnot, we got the death of Chester Bennington, the lead singer of the band Linkin Park. And think about that in regards to the St. Valentine's Day massacre that happened in Linkin Park, Chicago. And he died on the anniversary of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and he was best friends with Chris Cornell or whatever, right? The guy from Soundgarden, Black Hole Sun, all about the eclipse. And Chester Bennington died 33 days before the Great American Eclipse. Eclipse in Gematria equals 33. Right around that same time, we also got, I think it was the day before, Chester Bennington, maybe they both died on the same day. Maybe Chester Bennington died on the same day the Eagle landed on July 20th. I can't remember, but we also got the death of this guy, the Home Alone actor. And I mentioned the St. Valentine's Day massacre in this one as well because he died 157 days after the 88th anniversary of the St. Valentine's Day massacre. And 157 is the 37th prime number. And Chicago and Gematria equals 37. And he died 37 days before Macaulay Culkin's 37th birthday. And he was even born on 3/7, right? A lot like 37. He died age 71. His name in gematria equals 71. Just a ton of stuff. But I mentioned how in the movie Home Alone, they do the whole, get down on your knees and tell me you love me. And they do the whole Tommy gun thing. And they're doing I think it's a play on this or whatever, angels with dirty faces. It's like a gangster type thing, right? And it's connected to Chicago and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And this was just after the guy from Lincoln Park died, where the St. Valentine's Day Massacre was. And also in part two, they go to Florida, but Kevin gets lost and he goes to New York or whatever. But they're originally from Chicago. They go to Florida. Interesting, that's where the shooting took place as well, right? Florida. And when Kevin goes into the hotel, he sees Donald Trump or whatever, asks him like where the office is. Then later on, like 5 minutes later in the movie, when they're walking him to his room, they say, Herbert Hoover once stayed here or whatever, and he says, the vacuum guy. Herbert Hoover was the president in 1929, just after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And he was the president during the stock market crash. And there's a whole lot that goes along with this. I'm trying to make it simple and short. But the Super Bowl was super synced up to the stock market crash, the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. And think about this shooting in regards to 1929, the same year as the stock market crash, and how it's synced up to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But in gematria, I'll just show you really quick. Neil equals 88. Colin Kaepernick equals 88. The Star Spangled Banner equals 88. Trump equals 88 in gematria. And this was the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash this year on October 29th. And think about Herbert Hoover. HH. H is the 8th letter. You put them together, it's a lot like an 88. And he's the guy who signed into Congress that the Star Spangled Banner becomes the official national anthem. And think about that in regards to kneeling and everything else in regards to the NFL. And the Super Bowl is played at U.S. Bank Stadium that equals 88. And think about that. U.S. Bank, the stock market crash. Then you also have Donald Trump, the guy who wins the election on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. He wants to build the wall. We get the game show, The Wall makes a comeback. Think about Wall Street. The day after the Super Bowl was when we got all them stories about market meltdown and whatever else. Super connected. Also, just today, right after, a couple days after this Valentine's Day Massacre, we get this scare story from Des Moines, Washington, right? Think about that in regards to Herbert Hoover, the only president from Iowa, the president during the stock market crash. Des Moines, the capital of Iowa, it's no coincidence. They did this on purpose. I don't even know if it was truly in Des Moines, but that's how a lot of these places were reporting it, right? Because they want you to see Des Moines, because the pattern is that it's connected to 1929 and the stock market crash. So anyway, I got that out of the way. I noticed in regards to Jennifer Garner, though, I saw that Girl Scout cookies equals 231, which is this number that I've noticed whenever I see this number, if I follow a pattern and look more into it, it's always connected. I talked about the death of Ralphie May, possibly dying in 2017, and then he ended up dying 231 days after his birthday of cardiac arrest that equals 231. In this video I put out about fat comedians always dying by the number 124, I put that out on the 231st day of the year. And Ralphie May died in Las Vegas just after the Las Vegas shooting, right? And the guy from The Price is Right that equals 231, randomly, the guy who got the perfect showcase guess on The Price is Right, out of nowhere reaches out to me. I give him my phone number and email him back and tell him to get a hold of me. And he never does. And it's kind of strange that, someone reaches out to you like that. You think that they would respond back to you after you give them their phone number. Possibly, he's a good dude. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. He would randomly reach out to me. He's from Las Vegas. he reaches out to me the day before the Las Vegas shooting. All summer I talked about how, a time to look out for was right around the Jesuit anniversary this year in 2017, because there was something connected to a big event around that time. And on the Jesuit anniversary, somebody called me from Nevada, and I don't know who it was or whatever else. They didn't leave a voicemail, and when you call it, it doesn't do anything. So, it's pretty weird. But I knew there was something connected to that, and I looked her up, and I was thinking about Batman and whatnot because her and Ben Affleck just got divorced, and Donald Trump said he was Batman in 2015, which is a big pattern that I've been noticing, is that every video that I made in 2015 seems to be coming back up in the media lately. We even got the earthquake near Philadelphia that I talked about for, in 2015, that was a big thing that I was talking about. Something connected to earthquakes in Philadelphia. Then we got the Delaware earthquake this year, which was a 4.1. That a big thing was that it was supposedly felt in Philadelphia. 4.1, Super Bowl equals 41 in gematria. And remember, the Philadelphia Eagles went to the Super Bowl and they won with 41 points. So there's a bunch of stuff connected to 2015. And in 2015, I was talking a whole lot about Valentine's Day and how it was synced up to Michael Jordan and the movie Space Jam. Because Michael Jordan, when he came out of retirement, he wore the number 45 and Valentine's Day, the 45th day of the year. And he even wore the number 12 one time in his career, which was on Valentine's Day of 1990. And he scored 49 points in that game. It was the Chicago Bulls' 49th game of the season. And Valentine's equals 49, remember? And I also talked about how on the Gregorian calendar, February 27th, 227, which is the 49th prime number, is the same as Valentine's 214 on the Julian calendar, and a bunch of other stuff. 2015, we even had the Derrick Rose stuff with the Chicago Bulls. And Valentine's Day falls in the middle of the Wolf Festival called Lupercalia, that's on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of February. And the NBA All-Star Week happened, it fell on them 3 days that year, and we had the Teen Wolf. And think about wolves in regards to the moon symbolism that I'm talking about. The wolves howling at the moon and everything else. But we had Andrew Wiggins, a 19-year-old Minnesota Timberwolf, win the Rising Star Challenge MVP. And in regards to Love and Valentines, he got traded to Minnesota for Kevin Love, who went to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the next night, on Valentine's Day, his teammate, another 19-year-old teen Minnesota Timberwolf, won the slam dunk contest. His name was Zach LaVine, that even, sounds like loving. And he did the Space Jam dunk, right? And then we had Russell Westbrook win the MVP of the All-Star game. And I noticed that Russell Westbrook and Zach LaVine both went to UCLA. And so did Kevin Love. He went to UCLA. And on Valentine's Day, the best player on the team of UCLA, his name was Kevin Looney, right? And then he later on went and played for the Golden State Warriors, who won the NBA Finals that year, that I talked about in 2015. But there was something really connected to Space Jam and whatnot else. And think about Space Jam in regards to the Steve Miller Band, Fly Like an Eagle, right? But they also have the other song, Some People Call Me the Space Cowboy, right? And then he says, Some Call Me the Gangster of Love, right? Reminding us of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And anyway, it all goes back to Bill Murray, who is in Space Jam, right? Bill Murray from Chicago. I'll leave a link in the description about him in regards to him predicting the Cubs to win the World Series and whatever else. And, I even predicted the Indians to play the Cubs in the World Series in 2016 and whatever else. And there was it was connected to a space and moon theme in regards to the closest supermoon since the year 1948. And Donald Trump equals 48 in gematria. The Cleveland Indians hadn't won the World Series since 48. And Donald Trump even won the election, which was considered the biggest election upset since the year 1948 when Thomas E. Dewey lost to, can't even remember who it was, whoever Thomas E. Dewey lost to in 1948. But I'll explain Bill Murray here in a second. I just want to get to the point with Jennifer Garner here. I looked her up, and one of her big movies, other than Pearl Harbor, in regards to Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck, Batman. Donald Trump said he was Batman in 2015. The same weekend that we got the death of Batgirl, the death of the guy who dressed up like Batman. Just before that, we got the death of Morgan Freeman's granddaughter, and they showed her at the premiere with him, at the Batman premiere. And then we got James Holmes, the Batman shooter, being sentenced all within a span of like 2 weeks. And just before that, we got the train wreck and the Antioch theater shootings. A ton of stuff that goes along with it. But I looked up the film Daredevil, and I noticed that it came out on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And then I noticed that Jennifer Garner was also in a movie called Valentine's Day, the one with Taylor Swift and Ashton Kutcher and whatever else. And they even make a joke about the Chicago Cubs in that film, and also about the St. Valentine's Day massacre. But anyway, Affleck and Garner are both 45 years old right now. Valentine's the 45th day. Donald Trump, the 45th president. Mike Pence equals 45 in gematria. And frontwards and backwards. So I was like, interesting, there's something connected to Valentine's. And, I was thinking back on all of the stuff I covered back when the guy from Lincoln Park died, and I wondered in my head, I didn't write it in here, but I wondered if we were going to get a big event this year on Valentine's Day. And of course, we got this big school shooting. But looking through these movies, and in the movie Daredevil, I noticed that they talked about how there was like a director's cut with Coolio in it. Something to do with Coolio, and I thought, how interesting, because a month ago I documented some stuff about Coolio and Jeopardy and Gangsta's Paradise, right? Gangsta, once again, something to do with gangsters. And even if you look up Jennifer Garner, she says that her family's take on the world was practically Amish when she was growing up. And what I talked about in regards to Coolio was Weird Al's song Amish Paradise and whatnot, and the Pennsylvania Dutch, and how there was a theme in regards to something to do with the Dutch. And we even had the death of Darren Dalton, the Philadelphia Philly, that was connected to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And also the World Series with the Pennsylvania Dutch. I just watched part of the movie Geostorm the other night, and this satellite or something that can control the weather, right? It's called Dutch Boy. So just something to think about. If this stuff keeps happening, stuff that I was talking about 2015, we're going to get some significant earthquake this year. That's what I was talking about a ton. Some East Coast earthquake, or possibly something to do with the Golden Gate Bridge. That's what I talked about a lot in 2015, and how San Francisco and Philadelphia are interrelated, and they're both connected to Pope Francis. And somebody pointed out to me that pontiff even means bridge builder. And that's why we had the Super Bowl in Minneapolis that had the famous bridge collapse on 8/1, supposedly fell at 81 feet. The Golden Gate Bridge will be 81 years old this year. Golden Gate Bridge in gematria equals 81. Coolio even born on 8/1. There's a bunch of stuff with that too. But in regards to Valentine's Day, also 2 or 3 days before Valentine's Day, somebody commented on one of my old videos. Nobody hardly ever does this anymore. I got this, some guy being a dickhead or whatever, commenting because he didn't watch the whole video and didn't understand what I was talking about. He probably watched the first 30 seconds, but it was weird that he would comment on a video in regards to Valentine's, right? An old video. So I was like, there's got to be something connected to Valentine's. And I went back and looked at some of my stuff, and I re-looked up Bill Murray because he was super significant. The word Valentines with the V exception also equals 67. And I talked about how there's something super important to Prince and Queen Elizabeth and Valentine's Day. You know, Lupercalia, the wolf festival that Valentine's Day happens to be the second day of, it is in celebration of the she-wolf who suckled Romulus and Remus, right? And then Rome and Romulus, right? The founders of Rome or whatever. And they supposedly founded it on 421 BC. 421, and Queen Elizabeth born on 421, and Prince, the singer, died on 421, which can, in other parts of the world, they rate it as 21/4, like Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day to this day is 67 days apart, and Valentine's equals 67. Even in regards to Valentine's Day and Michael Jordan, I think it was 2015 on his 23rd anniversary of his shoe or whatever, Michael Jordan's, Prince played a party for him, you know, and Obama went and met the King of Jordan, right? And then Philadelphia used to be the capital of the country Jordan until 106 AD and then it was later destroyed by earthquakes. But moving on here, I'm going to make a shorter video too, but this is just the detailed video, whatever else, you know. But a long time ago, before I even really knew gematria, I mean, I knew simple gematria, that was it. I mean, and I was just kind of dabbling with it, and then somebody pointed out to me to go to Zachary K. Hubbard's channel because he's pointing out all this stuff and whatever else. All I knew was simple gematria. You know, I added up my name and it equaled the same as Back to the Future and whatever else, and I thought that was interesting. And it's 176, and 88 plus 88 equals 176. And my whole life was about the number 8, and nothing to do with gematria, but you know, like I got stitches when I was 8 years old, and because I rented the movie Ninja Turtles that came out on the day that leaves 88 days in the year, bunch of stuff. And anyway, I noticed this stuff with Bill Murray. Bill Murray's mom died at the age of 67 in the year 1988, and his dad died in 1967, and the movie Ghostbusters came out on 6/7, and Bill Murray, if you remember, in part 2 of Ghostbusters, in the very beginning, the lady goes on his TV show and says the world's going to end on Valentine's Day of 2016. And Bill Murray that year, 2015, also made this weird tweet on January 9th that said, you could give me 67 years to do something, and I wouldn't do it until the night before. And I always wondered, that doesn't make any sense, considering he was only 64 years old at the time. Why would he say, give me 67 years to do something? It just doesn't add up, you know? He should have said 64 years to do something, not 67 years. And I noticed that January 9th, 1/9, is the 67th prime number. Or 19, the 19th prime number is 67. And I thought, interesting, he would do that on this day. And he has all these other connections to 67. And then I learned about Pythagorean gematria, and I learned that Groundhog Day equals 67, and William Murray equals 67. And then later I even pointed out Cleveland Indians equals 67. And on the movie Space Jam was another thing that I pointed out in regards to 67, because just before Bill Murray comes in on Space Jam, they show us the score 77-67, and then all of a sudden it goes up to 77-76 for no reason whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense when you watch the movie, but just before Bill Murray comes in, the Tunes have 67 points, right? So I just knew there was something with 67 with Bill Murray, and now, learning reverse gematria, it makes so much sense. Look at that. Bill Murray equals 67 in reverse reduced gematria. It's so obvious. You learn gematria, You can follow these patterns before, and gematria is just adds even more to what you're talking about. Anyway, in this post, just, it was February 13th, but it's like early in the morning. Probably, we'll look and see when it was. It had to be really early. 12:58 a.m., so just after midnight on February 12th or February 13th, depending on how you look at it. I even re-mentioned how I forgot about the St. Valentine's Day massacre. And it was interesting. Something was seemingly showing us by following Jennifer Garner, pointless stories in the media, Valentine's Day. And I also pointed out Bill Murray turned 67 years old this year. And he also turned 67 on February or September 21st. That had a date numerology of 67. And even Valentine's Day, it's celebrated in America on February 14th, but in the Eastern Orthodox, it's celebrated on July 6th, which in most parts of the world, they write the date 6/7, a lot like 67, and Valentine's Day equals 67. And it was interesting that Bill Murray had turned 67 on a date numerology of 67. And with the end date, or not with the end date, the day before Valentine's Day, and think about his tweet the day before or whatever, for 67 years, I'd still wait until the day before. It was 145 days the day before Valentine's Day, which was interesting because Chicago, Illinois equals 145. That was a big number around the Chicago Cubs winning. They hadn't won in 145 years. Or the Great Chicago Fire was 145 years before on 10/8, the big number in regards to the Cubs. But I'll explain a little bit more of that in a minute. I also thought it was interesting in regards to Luke Wilson being in the car wreck that involved the golfer, right? And think about Space Jam, Michael Jordan going golfing, and he gets sucked into the hole, and Bill Murray's out there. And, he even says him and Larry Bird are both going to take twos on the hole, and he's wearing number two or whatever. The two, number 22, I think is what it was. But and Michael Jordan was 22 of 22 of the Space Jam game, supposedly. Whatever. Tons of other stuff with it. But Luke Wilson, pull it up really quick. Luke Wilson even shares a birthday with Bill Murray. I thought was interesting. See if I can pull it up here. And then he gets in the wreck with the golfer September 21st. And he turned 46 years old. Chicago equals 46. And he gets in the car wreck with the golfer. It just had my suspicions, I didn't know what to think of it. I didn't have enough time to even make a video or whatever, but so no big deal. But there's still something in regards to the accident that I know it has to do something with what I'm talking about. I just haven't figured it all out yet. But in regards to 67, I also pointed out that 67 days after Bill Murray's 67th birthday on the date numerology of 67 is November 27th, which is the 331st day of the year, and 331 is also the 67th prime number. So once again, there was something for sure connected to Valentine's Day this year. I didn't know if it was going to be, a big school shooting or what the event was or where it was going to be, but there was obviously something pointing to Valentine's Day from the stuff I was talking about in 2015. And then if you go and you look at the story, the shooter is supposedly, what's his name, Nicholas something? Nicholas Cruz. Of course, his name equals 67 in gematria. And he was 19 years old. The 19th prime, 67. Right? Perfect shooter for Valentine's Day. And a big thing with this, there's some type of tribute to the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series in 2016 that is connected to this school. Because the Chicago Cubs even won the World Series exactly 67 weeks before. If I could find my little thing here. No, I put it in here somewhere. Possibly didn't. If you go from the day the Chicago Cubs won the World Series to this Valentine's Day, exactly 67 weeks, right? And the lady that the school's named after, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, died at the age of 108, and her birthday 14/5. Remember, Chicago, Illinois equals 145. Whatever else. The Cubs hadn't won in 108 years. The Willis Tower in Chicago is 108 stories tall. The Great Chicago Fire was 145 years before the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in their 145th season. And it happened on 10/8. You know, all kinds of stuff. If you write out 145, it even equals 108. 108 was this big number in regards to the Cubs. 108 double stitches on the baseball. So this lady dies at age of 108, and she, dies on a date synced up to Chicago, synced up to the number 108. So I knew there was something connected to the Chicago Cubs, and even if you look it up, Anthony Rizzo, the Chicago Cub, he went to that high school or whatever. Notice he's born on 8/8. Curse of the Billy Goat equals 88 in Gematria. In 1929, well, also the Curse of the Billy Goat happened in the year 45, right? 1945, remember Valentine's Day, the 45th day of the year. Think about Back to the Future, too. Back to the Future, super important. Back to the Future 2, even 108 minutes long. And then Back to the Future 3, it came out in 1990, the same year that the school was supposedly founded. But in Back to the Future 2, or at the end of part 3, I guess, when he goes back to the future for the final time, it's in 1985 on October 27th, when the train destroys the time machine or whatever. October 27th is the anniversary of Philadelphia being founded. There's this interrelated web with Philadelphia, Chicago, and how it's synced up to this school shooting. But remember, also in regards to that, the Cubs beat Miami, right? And Miami and Gematria equals 45, or Illinois equals 45, Wrigley equals 45. I think even Cubs equal 45 in Gematria. Cubs equal 45. So it's definitely synced up to love and whatnot. And if you go back and watch my really old stuff, I even talked about the film I Pet Goat 2 and how it's connected. It even has the goat that comes out and then the baseball lights turn on right in the very beginning. And Obama starts laughing at 108 in the film. It was super connected to the Curse of the Billy Goat and whatnot. Anyway, look at some of this other stuff, and then I'm going to go back down to what I was talking about. But the Pope also, who banned Lupercalia and created Valentines, or made it a holiday, was Pope Gelasius. That equals 145 at Gematria. And the word Catholic equals 145. Remember Pope Francis's real name right now? Or real name? Jorge Bergoglio equals 145. The mayor of Chicago at the time of the Valentine's Day Massacre, he was born on 14/5. St. Valentine's Day Massacre equals 145 in Gematria. Al Capone equals 67, just like Valentine's. He also equals 108. Back to the Future goes to 2015, which was the year Philadelphia turned 333 years old. Philadelphia Eagles equal 333. They just won the Super Bowl. Lincoln Park equals 333. In 1929, the Chicago Cubs even made the World Series, and they lost to the Philadelphia Athletics. And that World Series began on 10/8, a lot like 108. Even if you go from the stock market crash, the anniversary of it, to Valentine's Day, it's 108 days. And Herbert Hoover, the president during the stock market crash, his birthday was August 10th. In most parts of the world, they write it 10/8, a lot like 108. 2015 was the 239th year of the United States, and that's why Donald Trump called out the kneeling during the NFL and whatever else on September 23rd, 23/9, the 52nd prime. It was Super Bowl 52. Trump's birthday is on Flag Day. And the stock market crash happened 239 days after Herbert Hoover became the president. There's something definitely synced up to 1929 that's going on to this year and how it's related. 1929. Even, I forgot to mention, even right after the death of Chester Bennington, the Lincoln Park guy, and the death of John Hurd, the guy from Home Alone and whatnot, connected to Chicago, we got this story about Chicago gangsters shooting at the Jacquees concert in Chicago or whatever, and they made sure to say gangsters, because they were connecting it to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They want you to see gangster. So I wanted to point out a few more things. This shooting was also a tribute to the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl, because if you look this lady up who it's named after, she even is from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Super Bowl was held. And the mascot of the school is the Eagles, right? And it even says that their marching band even played in Super Bowl 44, just reminding us of football. Even if you went from February, the anniversary of her death, to Valentine's Day, it's 52 days away, right? Super Bowl 52. The high school's name, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, equals 150, just like Philadelphia Eagles. Valentine's Day equals 52. I even pointed out in Jewish gematria, Eagles equal 128. Ash Wednesday equals 128. Ash Wednesday fell on Valentine's Day. 128 is a big number I mentioned in regards to Pennsylvania in general. William Penn equals 128. Pennsylvania became a state on a date numerology of 128. Ben Franklin, I think, died 128 days after his birthday, or something along the lines of that. I can't even remember it all. I should look it up. Maybe Ben Franklin just equals 128. I can't remember. There's something to do with Ben Franklin and the number 128, though. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with he died like 128 days after his birthday. Also, Valentines equals 49. Eagles equal 49. Parkland equals 49. I talked about in the beginning how Michael Jordan scored 49 points on Valentine's Day, where he wore the number 12, and it was their 49th game, and how it's synced up as well to Valentine's. I also, in regards to the Eagles, last year I was talking about my cousin who lived in Pembroke Pines. I think he lives in Davie, Florida, which is in the same area. And then the very next day we got the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting, which is in the same area. And he still lives there, and he's the only Philadelphia Eagles fan I've ever known in my entire life, which is interesting that we're getting a story connected to the Eagles once again in the same area that he lives. I even talked about my grandma dying this year. My grandma lived on Eagle Street, which is also his grandma and whatever else. In the town that my sister lives in, Albert the Bull was even on some of the commercials during the Super Bowl, and in regards to the town that she lives in, this giant bull statue and whatnot. But my sister's business that they own is even called Eagle something. It's just craziness. So I guess we'll leave it. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to make a shorter video. Just wanted to be more detailed. Hopefully it makes sense, whatever else. But if you write out St. Valentine's Day, it even equals 214, a lot like Valentine's Day. There's something going on with Chicago and the Cubs winning the World Series that's connected to this shooting. And I know that Luke Wilson story is interrelated in here somehow. It's absolutely a tribute to the Chicago Cubs, though. And I know it's something that has a lot to do with this year, 1929, which was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and also the stock market crash on the 29th day, and the only president from Iowa, the 29th state, was the president. In regards to the Cubs in 1929 and the stock market crash too, Chicago Cubs in gematria equals 91. Just want to point it out. Chicago Cubs equals 91. And 1929 equals 29 equals 91. And the Great Depression equals 91. So I don't know. There's something connected to it. Queen Elizabeth's 91 years old right now. 91 is the big number in regards to space and whatnot, too, that I pointed out. Space equals 91, and rockets equal 91, and asteroid equals 91, and 1991 was the year that the Soviet Union had dissolved and whatnot. That pretty much ended the space race, right? 91. So there's definitely something to do with 91. It's even, when the movie King Ralph came out and I talked about the Big Lebowski, how that's important, and he signs the check at Ralph's, and it's on 9/11 of 91. 91 was also that big number in regards to the Las Vegas shooting, right? That happened on October 1st, right? Philadelphia equals 101, but October 1st is the day that leaves 91 days in the year, and it was the Route 91 Harvest Festival and everything else. So who knows? I'm trying to figure this puzzle out. So we'll leave it at that. Like I said, I'll make a long, detailed video. I'm going to try to make a short one that, other people can understand better, but have a good one. Peace.